Trotsky is a podcast exploring the hidden language of the human experience through tarot, spirituality, psychology, linguistics, and personal transformation. So I wrote a book, The Secret Tarot No Longer Reader. This one is actually available on Amazon. That today is how the book was actually came into existence, the birth of the book, basically, and how all the phenomena that happened over the last 40 years occurred, and how the houseload of information, all the books that were collected, have all been reduced and put into some order to create the book. This book has been created from all this massive collection of journaling. But essentially, I was 16, 17 when I first started reading about tarot, and there was lots of theories. And I was in a school library, and the tarot was under the section of psychology. And we just had some really brilliant librarians. I just fell in love with librarians at the time, but they were amazing. I mean, they're people that can literally, any book ever known, in print or not in print, they can get. And somehow or another, they will, if things are legal or if things are religiously allowed or religiously not allowed, they will somehow or another smuggle it on the shelves under some form or another. And I believe that's probably what happened, actually. And later on, as I was doing other various courses, and I was probably a bit older, it was an open book. So it changed in a very short while, actually, from being in the closet to coming out of the closet. And then kind of it went through a time, I think, where it went back into the closet. Sort of like the ethos of the tarot. I mean, without going too political, when relating it to now, where we have an influx of different ethoses to the way we think. It's kind of a similar thing was happening, but undercover. It was undercover of education, undercover of what was good for us, undercover of this is how it's going to be. So what's actually gone into the book has been over 50 years or 45 to 50 years. And the book has been a reduction of all the work that we have done over the years. And we were literally working from them, but it was too complex to have in the book form. And some of the notes that were written from the actual courses we've been on, and some of the things that have actually stayed with us and grown, in actual fact, especially the astrology and all the things, all the journals and all the art forms, and how we've actually been able to create a kind of sculpture. So we've taken the art forms and created a sculpture of what our minds have related from these experiences. We're definitely exploring the languages that we're using in everyday life, and we're using the languages that are there that we haven't been had access to previously. It is that the thing is, the whole thing is we. The whole collection of things is we, because there's no way that me as a person, one single person, could possibly experience all these things. These are all things that are collections of various people, that have experienced these things. And all I can do is just, quite a lot of the time, is just look at it and record it. Because until I can actually accept it and it can become part of my knowledge base, it's quite difficult for me, a lot of the things. I first started studying psychology as part of another course, actually, that was to do with linguistics, and it was to do with English, actually. But then later on, I actually went on a course to Scotland, to the Highlands, and it was a course that actually eventually I ended up as a qualified neurolinguist. And it was an amazing course, because what happened was we had to fly out to Edinburgh and then get picked up to go to the actual place in the Highlands, which was in the middle of nowhere. And this was for a week. I think it was about 3 weeks per year for 3 years. And it was like a concentrated program, because the actual course was like a solid, proper 3-year course. But the thing is like very, very quickly, I became extremely interested in it. It was again, really interesting, because the different parts of the brain, the different parts of the way language is used, And the hypnosis, studying hypnosis was really interesting as well. Well, to start off with, I took linguistics as an English student when I took a secretarial course. Well, linguistics is the way we're receiving what someone else is saying and what someone else is receiving when I'm saying it. Well, when I went into linguistics, I went in with a preconceived idea of what right and wrong was to start off with. And eventually it took me years to discover there is no such thing as right and wrong, actually. There is that, it's just a concept that's been constructed. And this right and wrong is the first element of communications that we should look at. Because when we look at the fact, are we communicating something right or wrong? It's not an opinion. And if we're communicating it to somebody who already has a very staunch belief and who has been trained to have an idea of what right and wrong is, that will affect the way that it's received. Well, linguistics has actually been going on since I did GCSEs probably. And A-level, I did A-level English, and probably the linguistics started there, and still hasn't ended now, and I'm 70 years old in September. And so the linguistics are as interesting as they were when I was 16. Linguistics is what you're actually taking. So if you're looking at a picture, what is the picture saying to you? If you're looking at a man, what is the man saying to you? If you're looking at a woman, what is the woman saying? The man or the woman might not be saying a single word. So what is it you're actually receiving from that image? It's probably not the visual projection, but the linguistics as a vibe, what the actual person, people are actually giving out that isn't words. How much of that is, is human behaviour? I mean, how many times do you think of somebody and they phone you? When I studied psychology, I was actually studying it for a very particular reason. It was to do with getting people to relax and to be able to function within a group. I've been in some kind of production, television production for about 40 years, obviously. I went in as a linguist, where I was doing script linguist. So that was my job to start off with. Studied psychology. So I've got a variety of psychology diplomas, and the highest one ended up as the neurology and the NLP. And the psychology has actually been built up, because we have to remember that psychology is actually an opinion. It's not an actual, it's not a God. God didn't tell Moses about it. It was kind of the way it's occurred has been an eclectic collection of phenomena. But in reality, what's happening? So I've studied psychology on a variety of courses. I've studied psychology where my mind is now in a completely different place than what it was 45 years ago. In that the psychology of somebody in London and the psychology of somebody in Japan and the somebody in China is going to be completely different. So our expectations and our ideology of what should be happening and to what is happening. And psychology tends to cover all these things. It will map out what's actually happening. But the only trouble with a lot of psychology is they tend to be a bit dictatorial, but that's the way that we have studied in the past. So we need to look at it in the new light to things. Now, then this book is a collection of items that have been gathered. And one of the things I do when I go on courses, I usually make notes, but the notes are essentially what the book's actually made of, when it comes to narrative. The actual cards are a different kind of fish, because the cards are a collection of other people's dictation on what the cards are saying, and which come from basically the Tree of Life and the Egyptian philosophy. Now, the original book was originally a workbook that we put together, that we worked with. I think there was about 4 or 5 of us on the courses that we went on, and we'd always end up going on the same courses, basically. My sister was one of them, and we had a nice time. It was been quite enjoyable over the years. That's also been an issue, is all of these courses are very expensive, sort of in comparison to what it's been like in England, well, all through my life, where basically education has been free. And even though teachers have to be paid, sort of this new development of educational sort of investigation has been an exploration. So hopefully the book will reduce some of that for you as well. But each of the courses that we went on, like I say, were a collection of the actual cards and the actual presentation of each card. And as each card, especially the tarot, go back millions and thousands of years. I mean, some of them even go back as far as the Egyptian, writings. It's incredible. And so putting all of that into one little book is incredibly hard. But like I say, because we are all art orientated, we're quite a few artists, and so we need physical evidence of these new phenomena that we were encountering. The whole concept was so new to us. And obviously it's not now. We can understand that these things are real. One of the things that I did actually discover was that we're blocked from a lot of these things, and we're blocked for good reasons. I mean, we're blocked by parents, by governments that think we're going to do better by not knowing them, basically. I mean, and I have to agree, in some of the instances, I think, what the hell do we want to know that for? Obviously, in the time that we were actually looking at it, we came up with the cards. There were 3 cards that we changed. We changed the judgment to center. And the reason we changed it was because the judgment card, 20, was actually based on Catholic Christian ethos, where you had good and bad. Now, once we start going into this kind of area, there is no such thing as good and bad, really. It's just a decision that the churches created where the good and bad could be instilled on people to do exactly what they wanted. So we changed that from judgment to centre. Now, essentially, the cards are saying exactly the same thing. There isn't really anything that much different to the actual ethos of each card. How the actual cards came about. They were evolved from the original cards. So we can't say that we haven't used the originals, because all the originals were used. And especially the Fool, which was really hard to investigate or get some theories on, because it's kind of changed so much over the years. It's quite a conundrum. But as the actual figure of the actual tarot deck, being the character that actually goes through the scenario of 1 to 70, it's probably quite a useful kind of way of looking at it. And obviously, all the cards have been looked at in some detail, and this is just some of the work that was actually produced. Now, the important things that have actually come out of it, that was a surprise to me because I didn't know anything about it at all, was the astrology. And some of the people in the actual group are really astrology based, and this has been another phenomenal for me personally. My relationship with astrology it's been phenomenal, really. I mean, my acceptance of it. I mean, I just thought it was something you read in the paper. Astrology comes into tarot because before we had weather forecasts, before we knew what was going on with the actual relay of any kind of information, the tarot, the astrology was the one thing that we looked at for the weather prediction. And astrology was that, and so was tarot. So tarot cards would be thrown to tell us when it is a good time to plant a particular seed. So it was like a kind of weather forecast, and that was very related to the astrology as well. That would have been the practical application of astrology. And of course, these practical applications have been used for various means, by various religions and schools of thought. And so the other card that we changed was the death card, because although the death card was quite an interesting phenomenon, it still had that very religious orientated, manipulative feel, where the church or the government or whoever took the actual meaning of the word and changed it to if you don't do something, so it was a kind of a threat. If you don't do something, then a death card will appear. And that, when we've actually looked at it, the death card has got nothing whatsoever to do with any of that. We don't even know if the cards know the difference between people in body and the spirits. We don't even know if the cards know the difference between something that's written. We don't know if the cards know the difference between the written ethos, the real ethos, and something that's just made up. So we have to be very, very clear about where we're coming from, because we're not 100% sure exactly what they're talking about half the time, unless we're being exceptionally clear. This is where the astrology comes into the pictures on the actual card. So the two clover is actually the two clover we use as a reference to a temporary lucky deal. The four-leaf clover has only been in existence for about 150 years, where we thought of it as being a lucky emblem and a lucky Irish emblem. And we imagine this to be a temporary luck, not because of any reason, just the thing that's happened around it. That's the Six of Diamonds.
Or the Six of Pentacles in tarot.
Now, the thing is, you could actually reference that to an actual astrology sign. And
the Six of Diamonds in Lenormand and the Six of Pentacles in tarot is most strongly associated with the earth signs of Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn, Taurus claiming the primary connection. This is because the diamond suit in playing cards represents the element of earth, material concerns, work, money and stability, which perfectly mirrors the suit of pentacles. In astrology tarot correspondence, the number 6 is linked to the fixed signs Taurus, Leo, Scorpio and Aquarius.
Me personally, I am affected when we have retrogrades and things like that. They affect me really, really badly. And depending on, I mean, it could be really good actually as well, because some retrogrades are such where the actual thing opens up. Because a retrograde is only something that we imagine. It's not really happening. There isn't anything actually moving backwards as such. It only looks visually like it's moving backwards. But the thing is, the phenomenon that happens will change the vibration. And to me, vibrations 50 years ago would have just been something that musicians dealt with. Here is an extract from my book, Secret Tarot and Lenormand Reader, from a time when I first came into contact with Ghostbusters on a Feng Shui course. Before my first professional read in Hampstead, London, my older sister had gifted me, on my birthday, a Feng Shui course in her home village in deepest, darkest West Row, East Sussex, England. Exhausted from overwork, I gladly went. It was a really lovely area. I knew about Feng Shui type things, not putting slippery mats on polished floors at the bottom of stairs, angling writing desks towards the front door, and the espionage on Japanese and Chinese misinformation that had ended with slapstick comedy. One thing that happened on this idyllic holiday course was we were given divining rods. Mine was a metal coat hanger. We were shown how to use it and told we were looking for waterways and ley lines, whatever they were. My dowsing rod coat hanger went bananas and was doing its own merry dance, which I tried to suppress as it seemed unnecessary. I told the Feng Shui teacher. He said, it's a spirit that wants to pass to heaven. What? We were doing this course in a cow barn that had been converted to a human home. Dare not imagine the cost. A cow handler, someone dumped in the cow shed and for some bizarre reason having a fling with my coat hanger. The next thing seemed even more bizarre, as the Feng Shui teacher asked if there were any Ghostbusters in the group. Well, obviously there was. They went off to send the soul to heaven, and we went to the garden to learn more about ley lines, straight lines connecting three or more prehistoric or ancient sites. When thinking of that experience, I have come up with new questions I want to ask the tarot cards. The questions have literally just come up years later, and the mechanism of the actual event, I had to literally stand back. I mean, what's actually happening? Because I could see it was happening. It wasn't, sort of an out of world video that was happening. It was an actual event in a cow shed that had been converted to somebody's house, obviously. I had to stand back because my mind just wasn't in a place where it could accept it all. So the question was the spirit helped on their way by the Ghostbuster? So the cards have given us full house. So probably talking about the actual question. Now that the cards are saying that for some reason the spirit or whatever the entity was stuck in that environment. Now, I'm the last person to actually know at the time that these things even exist, but this is what the cards are saying now. So the thing is, it's given us the house, so we can assume the house is usually a safe, warm place for us to go. But in this instant, it might be saying that the spirit or the entity, or whatever it is, was actually in the house. Well, it was captured actually. So the next one, the rider, again, this is a very comfortable person that has actually got everything basically humanly possible and is actually able to spend a bit of time looking at these things. So, and the tree, the house. Now, one of the things about the tree is that the roots go very, very deep and the branches go up into the sky, unlike the snake that actually can wind all the way to the top of the mountain. So with the tree, although it often talks about computers, so especially if we've got 10 sides, we'll be talking about a computer worldwide system. This may be telling us a little bit about the root of the actual issue, why the spirit or the entity was there. Now we have mice, 23 mouse, and 23 mouse is usually a card that cautions us. Now, the caution me is totally irrelevant because some people absolutely love mice and have little pets as mice. But the thing is also mice are indicative of things like a plague and things that carry germs and diseases. So, depending on which way we're going to look at it, cute little fluffy mice or a disease-ridden um, animal basically bringing nasty things. We'll leave it there. That is a very definite no, and that is the only no we've got in the pack. And again, the fish, and that's the king of diamonds or the king of pentacles. Now, the king, this is the card of absolute wealth. Now, the thing is, when we're talking about absolute wealth, we're talking about a group of people who did not require any assistance. They were all there because they wanted to be there. None of them had any need for finding food or shelter or any of the other things. They were simply there for an inquiry, a relaxation, basically. So if we look at this, the cards are saying, yes, the spirit was helped on their way by the Ghostbusters. But one of the things we need to remember, these Ghostbusters were in human body and they have exactly the same biases that we have if left to their own devices. So the mouse might be telling us to keep that in mind. Although cards are saying yes, the spirit or whatever was actually helped, we have to remember that there may be other things that are in this actual cluster. Okay, so if we move on, the book, like I say, the book tells us exactly whether it's yes, no, or negative, and we can take this from a system that we already know as positive and yes as negative. My sister actually does 6 cards, and which I find slightly harder, because I find with the 5 cards it's easy to give a yes or no mainly. And also, we have the two yeses and the two nos, which give us the wrong question. So even though this is a few years later, I've actually started to question what was happening and the value of the occurrence, really. And the true value for me is these people that call themselves Ghostbusters. To me, they're kind of like earth angels. And I think, what the heck are they doing that for? I don't know. I think my first reaction would be irritated, that I'd be sort of bothered by a ghost. I think, well, what, go and sort out these, ghosty things, and or maybe I would help. I mean, these ghosts, can't they go and see ghosty psychologists or something? I mean, one of the questions you might ask is, why the heck would the ghosts need your help? I mean, it brings up a whole phenomenal relationship, or blowing your mind out. What actually happens? And is there another realm that where all these things are occurring? Are they occurring right here, right now? And we're just sitting here videoing this podcast, thinking, oh, let's ask this question, and would I help these ghosts if they came to me? And the first one is obviously the lady, 29. The second one is 36 cross. Now, then this card can actually talk about a holy altar, actually, and that's quite interesting. And then the 14 fox, the cunning fox, and then we have the 32 moon, and then we have the 32 king, which is a work card, a yes work card, a neutral moon card, a no fox card, 36 neutral, and 29 lady neutral. So effectively, we've got a yes, no, which balances each other out. Because if we're going with the yes, no system, and if someone was here to actually look up the AI on it, would actually get their opinion as well. But on this system, this is a yes, no, saying that we're either asking the wrong question, or maybe it's something we shouldn't be asking. But my guess is this is not the right question. Well, like I say, it was a cowshed before it was converted into a home. And one of the cards actually were talking about wealth, and this is an extremely wealthy area. Yeah, what was the ghost doing there? I mean, why was it? There's obviously some kind of entity where you can choose to go or you can choose to stay. I don't know. I didn't know that phenomenon actually occurred. But it would seem that from this, it would seem that that's one of the options. And why were they deciding they had to stay? I mean, that's another question. Tarotsky is going to be the questions, these tarot questions being asked are only going to be available to people on Patreon, and even comments are only going to be allowed from those people. So each episode, we're going to bring different people with different ideologies and be able to settle in the middle somewhere. And hopefully they'll let me do their tarot for them.
Tarotsky says, let's have a look at